access and knowledge and entrepreneurship to advance economic progress for all. As you're going to see in the chat in just a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to help entrepreneurs fuel prosperity, no matter where their journey begins. Be sure to check out those links and resources shared in the chat. Now we're going to launch a few polls to take a step back and take a temperature gauge on how you all are doing today. We use this information to fuel and guide the programs we provide for this global community of entrepreneurs. The first one, how are you feeling about your business? Are you optimistic? In survival mode? Let us know, and thank you for voting. Also, if there are any specific topics or challenges you'd like us to create resources for, feel free to share them in the chat. We'll add them to our list. A couple more housekeeping items before we get started. Let us know where you're dialing in from the chat. In the chat. We'd love to see where everyone's coming from and for our time together today. Plus, we'll see if you have a neighbor. This other poll based on current events, are you reimagining your go-to-market strategy? Yes, no, or unsure. Looks like yes is in the lead here. Thank you all for voting. Second housekeeping item, we're gonna be hosting live Q&A near the end of the event, so please submit those questions for us at the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. Final poll is what's keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales? Let us know. All right, while you're answering, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the incredible support of our corporate partners. The work we do at the center wouldn't be possible without all the generosity and belief of our partners and funders, including NASDAQ, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, KPMG, Walmart, the Asia Innovation Hub, Wilson Sonsini, the Nuri Foundation, and BPM. We're deeply grateful for their partnership and hope you'll join us in sharing that appreciation too. All right, before we get started, let's see where everyone's coming in from. Let's see, Maryland, Oakland, Chicago. Welcome, everyone. Greetings from Arizona. Texas, Austin. Awesome. Lots of different time zones here. Well, welcome everyone, and without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest. Welcome back to the stage, Mike Miles, startup mentor, investor, and advisor. Mike, so happy to have you.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. It's so great to spend this morning with so many of you. I think we have over a few hundred people joining this morning, so I appreciate everybody's time out of your busy schedule. You know, one thing that'll be interesting, I have 4 different opportunities for you to engage in chat, and we'll just see how many people can jam their answers into chat as we go with so many of you joining this morning. So we'll see how that works out. I'm going to share my screen. Let me get that going here, and then we'll just get started. Colin, I assume that I'm sharing the right screen.
Looks great.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. First of all, just an introduction. Who am I? So first of all, I'm a founder of an organization called Milestone Leadership, where I focus on a couple different things. I do some executive coaching. I have 4 or 5 different executive coaching clients at this point. And then I do some fractional work currently for a couple different companies, a company called Venture based in Silicon Valley. It's a health tech company. And then I'm a fractional COO for an AI services company based up here in the Pacific Northwest. I also work down at the University of Arizona through the executive ed department. So I'm an executive instructor through executive ed down there, and we service clients from all over the world, actually. And so I do that a little bit. I'm on the board, and in fact, the board chair of an organization called the Watson Institute. Now, the Watson Institute, you can think of them very similar to the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, where you're joining today, but their particular focus is on social impact ventures. And so they provide programming and support systems for early stage social impact founders. I'm also a mentor in a group called Unreasonable. Now, Unreasonable is similar to Watson in that they focus on social impact ventures, just ones that are a little bit further along in their entrepreneurial journey. And so I'm a mentor for that organization. I used to be a general manager at Microsoft, where I spent 20 years. I retired back in 2019, so it seems like ages ago that I last worked at Microsoft, but I worked there for 20 years, doing various, mostly software product development initiatives. And then I'm an unlikely endurance athlete. So for those of you that are runners or trail runners or like to do endurance events, I'd appreciate outreach and just see what you're working on. I'd love to hear about that, and we can share stories. All right. Let me use that as the segue to talk about kind of the origin story for this particular talk. So years ago, maybe 5, 6 years or so ago, I decided to sign up and run the Seattle Marathon. And I worked with a trainer who was focused on runners, and in particular runners like myself who are a little bit older and just starting running for the first time. And he developed a training plan for me, and I was committed. Boy, I was dialed in. I knew what to do. I knew what training runs I was going to do. I had planned my where I was going to run, and I was looking forward to this event. The thing that I didn't do, unfortunately, was learn how to say no to the other things that compromise my ability to train. So things got in the way. I canceled training runs. There were a number of weekends where things came up and I wasn't able to train like I wanted to. And it turned out that marathon was just a disaster. I finished, but just barely. And I think I finished 5.5 hours or something like that, which was pretty long. Now, fast forward to last year. Last year, I also ran the Seattle Marathon back in 2024. I was able to apply some of the things that we're going to talk about today and really focus on what I wanted to do and really focus on saying no to the things that were going to compromise my ability to meet my goal. And I finished the Seattle Marathon this last year a little over 4 hours. And I felt great. Well, great as you can feel, but I felt great at the end of that. And so my takeaway, or the intended takeaway from that, really, it's not so much that you know what to do, but you're also intentional about what not to do. And I'm going to give you some tools and frameworks for you to think about as you consider what not to do as part of your entrepreneurial journey today. So just to hammer that point home a little bit, the hardest part of leadership is deciding where to focus your energy. And there's 2 parts to that. Usually we think about focusing our energy based on our strategic plan or a market that we're going after or a particular customer or customer segment that we'd like to attract. We really think about the things that we're going to do. But the truth is the most important part, or at least one of the most important parts, is also thinking about what not to do and protecting your time from the things that could distract you from achieving your goal. So the visualization here, this telescope, I'm sure you've seen them if you've been to tourist areas with great views. The reason I selected this particular image is if you look in the horizon without looking through that telescope, there's lots of places that you can go. Lots of things that you can see, lots of things that you can do. But if you look through the telescope, you really narrow down your focus and look for the one thing that you're gonna that you want to go see, the one thing that you aspire to go do. And so I want you to think of your leadership journey for today as not scanning the entire horizon, but really focusing down and looking through that telescope and really setting your sights on that very specific goal and shedding all the distractions from everything else. So our first question, I'd love for you to answer this in chat if you can, is what percentage of your time or your team's time do you spend on deciding what not to do? I know a lot of you would say you spend a lot of time on deciding what to do, strategy and reviewing metrics and OKRs and that kind of thing. But I want to know how much time you spend on deciding what not to do. I'll give you a couple seconds to put that in chat. I see 5%. I see a couple 20%. Somebody qualitatively said not enough. A 2% number, that's interesting. 45%. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, the 45% person. I'd love to hear more about that. 25, 30%. Okay, so these numbers are actually more impressive than I thought they would be. I was expecting most of you to answer somewhere in the single digit range. But it's great that you're already starting to think about what not to do and being intentional about that. That's going to set the stage for the rest of the discussion. So here's the tools that we're going to talk about today. I'll just name them three things: say no, be proud, and focus. Those are the three tools: say no, be proud, and focus. And I'm going to elaborate on those here in the upcoming slides. Let's start with say no. The idea behind saying no is a lot of us. I know I do this. I say yes because I'm not brave enough or confident enough or ready to say no. And that, I think, sometimes comes from us not understanding the criteria, not having good mechanisms to say not no, but maybe not now, and maybe some polite responses to the requests that you might have on your time, like, yes, I can do that, but later, or what should I stop working on, those kinds of things. So let me elaborate a little bit on these things. So I try to, not 100% of the time, but hopefully 95% of the time. For me, if an ask is not a clear and obvious yes, then it's a clear no. So things that are on the edge for you as you're trying to decide of things that you could work on, if it's not clear and unanimous and empathetic or strong yes, it really should be a no. So that's one tool to think about. If it's not a strong yes, it should be a no. The next tool I want to talk about is if somebody comes and asks you to do something, maybe you're not yet ready to decide. So for you, a good mechanism is to say, not now. Not now. Yep, I hear you. I'd like to consider that. Give me some time. I'll put it on my backlog and I'll come back to you with an answer soon. So it's non-committal, but you're not committing to yes. You're at least committing to consider it. And so not now, I think, is a good go-to phrase for many of us that aren't yet ready to commit yes or no, aren't sure whether it's a clear yes or not yet. And then lastly, I have these sayings in my bag of tricks that hopefully deflect some of the things that I want to say no to. I just have ready response to that. The first response is, yes, but I'll work on it later. Or another one that maybe clients ask me is, can you take this on? I often respond with, yes, what do you want me to stop working on, in lieu of the thing you just asked me. So those things, if you can have those statements or those responses in your toolbox, I think that can give you a little bit of courage in order to say no when things come up. So our next reflection: can you remember a time when you last said yes to something and you regretted it, that you wish you would have said no? As anonymously as you need to, if you could add that to the chat window, that would be awesome. We'll give you just maybe 15, 20 seconds to do that. What is one thing that you said yes to that you wish you hadn't? Being part of a board, that's interesting. Board of nonprofits, yeah. Going to a party, I hear you, Petrus. Too many founder tech events. It scrolled past, so I didn't catch the name, but I'd love for you to reach out to me on LinkedIn and just share a little bit more about that. Homeschooling, yeah, I hear you. During COVID, we had high school around my dining room table, my wife and I, and that was definitely a time commitment that I wish we hadn't committed to. Yeah, I think all those are great. All of us do this. All of us have things that come up that we say yes to that we wish we would have said no to. And if you think back on the tools that we talked about a second ago, are there at least some of the examples that you shared in chat that you could have said no to if you applied one of these tools? It's a rhetorical question, but just consider that. Could you have said no to something if you had these tools in your toolbox and knowing what you know now? Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is this metaphor that I call be proud. And the idea behind that is asking yourself, in 6 months from now, will I and/or the team be proud that we invested our time and energy on this project? In 6 months from now, will I and/or our team be proud that we invested our time and energy on this project? And the idea behind that It really is to imagine the work that you're doing. You want it to be as lofty as possible because lofty goals create meaning and have disproportionately higher impact. If you're doing things because you feel like you need to, or it's a must have, or it's the next logical thing that you should do in the roadmap, it's unlikely to rise to the bar that I'm trying to evangelize here. It's unlikely to be a thing that you're going to be proud of in 6 months' time. So if you ask yourself that question when new initiatives come up, is this the thing that's going to make myself and our team proud in 6 months' time? If it's an obvious yes, then of course it's a good candidate. You should consider doing that project. If you answer no, it's not necessarily something that you should say no to. Like if it's not going to make you proud in 6 months, it's not necessarily a thing that you should say no to, as we'll talk about in a few slides. But it definitely should give you pause. It definitely should give you pause. If you're not, if you don't know for sure or are not confident that the thing you're considering is going to make you proud in the next 6 months, then it's definitely something for you to consider and not say yes to automatically. This could be anything. This could be an endurance race that you're training for. It could be launching your project, your product in a new market. This could be acquiring a new company. This could be becoming an entrepreneur for the first time. Those are big, lofty goals. Those are the kinds of goals that I'm talking about. Things that I'm not talking about necessarily are a customer asks for a special feature that is unique to them. You know, you might need to do it to keep that customer happy or retain that customer over time or something, but it's not rising to the level that we're talking about. It's not rising to the level that you're going to be proud in the next 6 months necessarily. So really think about the things that are on your plate, the things that you're trying to decide. If they're not going to make you proud in the next 6 months, what can you do? What are other projects you can work on that you will be proud of in the next 6 months? Or what can you do with the current projects you're exploring to get them to rise to the level you're going to be proud of the next 6 months? Give yourselves opportunity to be proud. If you can, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes to think about this. Actually, 3 minutes, just in the interest of time. 3 minutes to think about this. If you could write down one project that would make you and your team proud over the next 6 months, go ahead and spend 2 or 3 minutes doing that, and then we'll recap from there. So I'm going to go on mute for 3 minutes, and I'll rejoin you in just a couple, okay? So for those that are starting to wrap that up, and if you're willing to share, I wouldn't mind hearing about those projects in chat. No need to add them to chat if you're uncomfortable sharing or don't want to share, that's fine. But if you're willing to share, I think that would be awesome. So as you're wrapping up, add them to chat if you feel comfortable doing that. We'll give everybody 1 more minute. Okay. For those that are ready to join, feel free to join. I'm just going to review some of the comments in chat here. So Eileen says, sell my collection to book a museum show at another major museum. I would love to hear about that, Eileen. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and share more about that. That definitely sounds something that I would be proud of if I was in your place. Jose is going to create AI agents to handle many of our high time investment, low ROI tasks. And in fact, Jose, we're going to talk a little bit about a framework related to that here in just a couple minutes. I think the challenge for you is, as you're thinking about those AI agents, that's something that you feel like you need to do, or is that something that you're going to be super proud that you did? And I'm not judging one way or the other, but that would be the criteria that I would encourage you to think about. Launching our actual MVP. Courtney, I love that. Okay, Lauren, launching a new flavor condiment sauce. Definitely reach out to me. I want to hear more about that. Yeah, so these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. These are the kinds of projects that for many of you are likely to lead to something that you're proud of in the next 6 months or so. Yeah, that's exactly the bar that I'm trying to encourage here. Okay, the last tool that we'll talk about is focus. So the idea behind focus actually came from a book by Jeffrey Moore. Many of you know Jeffrey Moore. His most famous book, I think, is Crossing the Chasm, but he's written a number of other books as well. This one, the book that inspired the framework we're going to talk about here is called Escape Velocity. Feel free to check it out. If you don't want to read the whole book, this is not a plug, but there's a service that I use called Get Abstract that writes 2 or 3 page abstracts of most business books. So if you don't have time to read the whole book, check it out on Get Abstract. Escape Velocity by Jeffrey Moore is really, really just a good book, not just for this framework we're talking about, for a lot of other reasons as well. The idea behind this framework is that teams really thrive when everybody knows what's core to the business and that they're working together to reduce what's context. And I'll define those terms a little bit here in just a second. But your team is going to thrive when they know what's important and are working to reduce the effort around what's a necessary evil, what's things that you need to do to keep the business running, but are not necessarily the things that are core to making your business successful. So like any good framework, it's a 2-dimensional framework. On the left-hand side, you have core and context. Core are things that are vital for your business or strategically important to your business. If you didn't do those things, you would not be in business. So that's what core means. Context are things that either are discretionary, like customizing some work for one particular client, or maybe over-engineering beyond what the particular feature needs, or those kinds of things. Or there are things that you could outsource. So things that you need to do, like payroll and pay your taxes, but are not necessarily things that are going to differentiate you as a company. Across the bottom are 2 criteria, differentiating and non-differentiating. So differentiating are things that you do different, ideally better than the competition. And non-differentiating, of course, are just the opposite. Now, that's not to say that you only need or only can work on things that are differentiating and core. You need to do payroll. You need to pay your taxes. You need to do compliance. You need to do all these other things. But where you should be spending most of your energy, your creative energy, and ideally most of your time is in the upper left. Things that are innovating your product and building customer trust and developing your team. Those are things that I think are core and differentiating. Things that you're going to have to do, but and maybe are core to the business, depending on what sector you're in, are reporting and compliance and those kinds of things. Things that I would say you should seriously question whether you should do them at all are, like we said, customer-specific requests, over-engineering particular features, custom processes that are unique to your business, but there's no particular business value in customizing that process. And then in the lower right, things that you should outsource, ideally outsource, things like payroll and maybe your accounting systems and paying your taxes and I get caught up in this sometimes as well, as really over polishing slide decks because you want to make sure that it looks its best. But maybe nobody cares that it's as polished as you're putting the time in for. Those are all things that maybe you need to do as a company, but definitely are outsourced candidates. Depending on your business, it would be great to see if you can set a benchmark for the upper left-hand quadrant. That's where 60%, 70% of your business ideally should be spending its time, is in the upper left. It's going to vary, of course, depending on what your business is. But if you can set a target, 50, 60, 70% of time and energy spent in the upper left-hand corner, that's kind of the emphasis that I'm evangelizing for you to put in the upper left. The upper right, of course, you're going to need to do, and maybe that's 10, 15%. The lower left, 5% or less. And then the lower right, 0 or 1%, especially if you can outsource all of that. Okay. Your mileage is going to vary, of course. The percentage of time that you're going to allocate to each of these quadrants is going to vary depending on your business and what stage you are and that kind of thing. But just as an example of what I'm looking for, 60, 70% in the upper left and 0% in the lower right, maybe 1% in the lower right to kind of manage the vendors that are doing that work for you. Okay. So one easy way to remember all these things is in the upper left, it's stuff that you're going to be proud of. Remember the last framework that we talked about. Ideally, you're working on things that are going to make you proud over the next 6 months. Those things go in the upper left-hand corner here. The upper right is kind of what I call the broccoli of business. So these are things that you need to eat, but are not necessarily the things that are the most exciting. So eat your broccoli, but it's not the thing that's going to cause you to go back to that restaurant over and over and over again. Okay. So the broccoli of business is the upper right. The lower left, these typically are shiny objects that are disguised as strategy. The team might get excited about it, or you might get excited about it, or a particular customer might get excited about it. They're excited about it, but they're often not things that are core to the business. They're not the things that are going to drive your business forward. They're not the things that are going to make you proud in the next 6 months. So be careful of shiny objects that are disguised as strategy. And then lastly, the lower right, this is where your time goes to die. It's easy to spend lots of time in implementing a CRM tool or doing your own payroll or building an accounting and finance team where that could be easily outsourced. Be careful of the things that are in the lower right, because those are time sucks that will take away time from the stuff that you should be spending time in the upper left. Okay. All right. Couple prompts here. So if I was to ask you, if you're brave enough to share, how much of your time do you spend in the upper left? Go ahead and put that in chat. How much time do you spend in the upper left? And then after you do that, what's one thing you could do to reduce or delegate the context so you can spend more time on core? What's one thing you could do to delegate stuff in the lower right so you can spend more time on the stuff that's in the upper left? I love, Jennifer, your comment after this talk, not enough. No judgment, Jennifer. We're all kind of in the same place. Connie, I love your answer. 60% in context and 40% on other stuff. That's great. Also, Connie, outsourcing bookkeeping. If anybody is looking for an agency to outsource things that are in the lower right, let me know. I have a Rolodex that is full of people that can help you on that part of your business. Just let me know. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I need to delegate. You're in the process of hiring an intern. That's great. Be careful what you're delegating to the intern, so the work doesn't become you coaching the intern to do the work. Make sure that the work that you're delegating to that intern is kind of right-sized for that intern skill set. Yeah, I think all this is fantastic. I'll just pick on one more. Tremaine, I hope I got your name pronounced correctly. Please correct me if I didn't. We spend 65% of our time working on core and currently working on our new app for our digital health and wellness platform. I'd love to hear more about what that product is. Somebody is asking, will you go into detail about the internship? We're going to shift to Q&A here in just a couple seconds. So if that's a question you want me to opine on during Q&A, let's revisit that when we shift to Q&A. Okay, thank you for that. If you've had a chance to identify one way on one thing on paper that you could do to delegate some of the stuff in the lower right, that's fine too. Okay. I want to close to leave adequate time for Q&A. So first of all, there's a couple things that I would recommend you read as you have time. The one book, Essentialism, Gary McGowan is just a great, easily digestible author. I read this book for the second time when I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, and I probably read it in 3 hours. And there's such a wealth of practical information that touches on a lot of the things that we discussed today. So if you have 3 hours on some rainy Sunday morning in front of the fire in the fall coming up, that's a great book to read, Essentialism. And similarly, a lot of praise for The One Thing. Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, really, really good book about identifying and focusing almost on only one thing. Of course, you can't just focus, you can't only do one thing, but the focus on the one thing, I think, is going to differentiate many of our companies from the competition, is just nailing the one thing, being better than the competition about that one thing. And that's what this book talks about, is that. To get there, you're going to have to say no to lots of stuff and to focus and to do things that you're proud of, like we were talking about. Okay, the upper left-hand corner has a camera. Take a picture of this slide if you want to remember what we talked about, but let me just review the things that we discussed before we shift into Q&A. The first thing is say no. So say no. Remember, there's 3 tools that you can put in your toolbox. The first one is, if it's not a clear yes, then it's probably a clear no. So if somebody asks you to do something and it's not an immediate, resounding, highly confident yes that's aligned to your core, then it's a no. Okay, so that's tool number 1. Tool number 2 is, don't force yourself to decide in the moment. If you're not sure whether it's core or context, feel free to create a not now bucket and tell whoever's asking, hey, not now, I need time to think about this and make sure it's high enough priority for me to invest my time in. I'll get back to you in a week or 2 weeks or tomorrow afternoon or whatever it is. So your not now bucket could be a useful tool to just take the pressure off yourself in terms of responding in the moment to something that you might regret later. The last thing under say no is learn how to politely say no. My favorite saying is, I can do that, but I need to know what you want me to take off my list instead. And getting the requester to prioritize for you and for themselves about what's most important is a very useful way for you to say no. It may turn out that it is more important, who knows? But really making sure that whoever's requesting you to do this new thing is intentional about the relative priority of that new thing versus the other things that are on your list, I think is key to that. The next tool that we talked about is be proud. Ask yourself, will I be proud of the time that we invested in this thing in 6 months from now? If you're not, it's probably not worth doing. So really be intentional about that. If it's something that's going to make you proud in 6 months, then it's probably worth doing. If it's not, it's probably not worth doing. So use that as the benchmark for the things that you're investing your time in. And it could be anything like we said, like we talked about. It could be an endurance thing. It could be a vacation that you've always planned with your family. It could be launching a new business or launching your product in a new market. It could be anything. But just make sure that things you're investing your time in, by and large, are things that are going to make you proud in 6 months from now. And then last, we talked about this focus framework. So invest heavily in core differentiators, things that are in the upper left. Those are the things that are going to durably differentiate your business from the competition. Those are the things that are going to propel your business forward faster than anything else in that framework. So invest heavily in that. So 60, 70%. I saw a few comments where people were investing 60 and 7% in that core. That's amazing. Keep doing that. Everybody else, figure out a way that you can invest 60 or 70% in the upper left. And then relentlessly streamline, outsource, or question everything else. There might be things that you have to do. You have to pay your taxes. You have to do your payroll. You have to be compliant depending on what sector you're in. You're going to have to do that. But if you can minimize your energy on that by outsourcing or streamlining, you'll be far better off and have far more time to invest in the upper left, the things that you should be working on that will make you and your team proud. Okay, I'd love for you to connect with me. I keep asking you to connect with me on LinkedIn. So QR code on the left, my website on the right. Either of those works great for me. I just really want to hear what you're working on and maybe hear what some of the challenges are you're facing. A lot of you, for the comments that I was able to read, are working on some very interesting projects that really piqued my interest. So please reach out. I'd love to hear from you and what you're working on. And with that, we can shift to Q&A. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the moderators on the screen here. Yeah, Colin.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. And that's some really great stuff. You're on the way to becoming the next Greg McEwen with that essentialism on these recommendations. I love it.
I get no kickbacks from any of those, from either of those books, but I just really think highly of both those authors.
Yeah, no, it's really great advice. And we got some good questions. And if you haven't dropped them in yet, but you're thinking about typing them into the Q&A box, drop them in and we'll get to them all. So this is a more of a thought-provoking comment/question. Currently use the Eisenhower matrix. What are your thoughts on its effectiveness based on like the four quadrants? Urgent, not urgent and important, important and not urgent, urgent, not important. So kind of on your a different approach to your matrix too.
Yeah. I like that matrix as well, and I don't think that they're contradictory. I would use the Eisenhower matrix more for things that are tactical decisions, things that are hitting your plate today that need to be responded to today. Things that are in your inbox typically are things that you could apply the Eisenhower matrix for. When you're thinking about strategy, it's less important, I think, to understand what's urgent than it is to think about what's going to distract you from working on things that are going to make you proud. And so I think those two frameworks, you should use both, I think, but apply them for the right things. The core context matrix is really more around company strategy, product strategy, and so forth. And not necessarily a tool that you can use for tactical decisions.
So you could almost double click into each of your quadrants and apply the Eisenhower matrix.
Absolutely, but I would think like in the upper left, if you're asking the question, "What's urgent?" I worry that you're going to make a quick twitch decision because it's urgent and not because it's important. And so just be careful about how those two things play together. But Colin, I totally agree with your point. You could use them together, of course, but really the Eisenhower matrix really is about tactical decision making and not strategic decision making.
Awesome. Another question here from Sandra. Does the stage of your business planning play a role in how much time is spent on these practices? Prior to the marketing stage, answers to these questions was opposite of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the say no practice, I would say, is universal and timeless. If you're getting your first MVP out there, it's equally important for you to say no to everything else and really focus on the one thing that you're going to use to make your product different and ideally better than the competition. So I would say that's independent of stage. I think if you skip ahead to the core context framework, yes, of course, you're probably wearing multiple hats as a sole proprietor or a solopreneur. You're probably spending all of your time doing everything in all four of those quadrants. I would say that that's probably a trap to get into that pattern. And so, what you might do if you're early stage is get somebody to challenge your thinking about what is eventually going to be in the upper left and what should eventually be in the lower right. May not be feasible today. Maybe you don't need payroll today, for example. But just don't set yourself up where that pattern is going to repeat as you scale your business. And having somebody who's a sounding board, I think, can help you do that. Even if the question is eventually, how would I separate the work that I'm doing into those four quadrants?
And we have another question from an early stage founder that double clicks into the revenue portion of that. And how do we balance saying no in the early stage of our business when revenue really matters?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's hard to talk about that in specifics without knowing your particular business situation. But I would say that no matter what else you're doing, I think there's this saying that you need to fight to survive another day as a founder. And so anything you need to do so that you're alive tomorrow, I would prioritize for sure. That may not be strategic. It may not be strategic, but it's probably an override to the core context framework to some extent. If you have the best allocation of your time and energy using that core context framework, but you don't have enough revenue to keep the doors open tomorrow, it's not going to matter. And so, yes, as long as you're not compromising your principles or painting yourself into a corner, going after revenue, I would think is the higher priority bit for most of us. If you're operating in the black with a healthy margin on an ongoing basis, then it's probably a good time to think about the core context matrix.
Yeah, and what you were saying about the shiny objects reminded me of advice we got from one of our other speakers and mentors, which is he had a sign in boardrooms that he would, when a founder was chasing a shiny object that wasn't a core competency, that said, "Is this a revenue generating activity?" So yeah, revenue in the early stages.
Absolutely, yeah. It's also hard, I think, as founders to know what is core versus what's a bright shiny object, especially as you're trying to dial into product market fit. It's not always obvious what's just a bright shiny object that's contrary or conflicting, compromising your ability to go after core. I think for that reason, having a mentor or an advisor, whatever that you can connect with and use as a sounding board is really, really, really important. Really important. You don't
Awesome.
have to be the only brain in the room to make some of these decisions.
So to build off that, there's a question from an attendee that says, "How can one get a mentor if you don't
Well,
have?"
I believe, Colin, you can talk about the NEC's mentoring program for. So that's one mentoring program for, especially if you're very early stage. I think as you're starting to consider whether you're going to take seed investment and you're getting closer to product market fit, having an advisor that maybe you're compensating through equity is maybe also a choice. And there's lots of those out there. I'm one. I have a network of people who are willing to do that. These are people who, in exchange for equity, are very happy to give you their time, and it's a very cost-effective way for you to get advice. There's also people that are just willing to give their time and energy for free that I have a Rolodex of, and I'm sure Colin and other people on the call have a Rolodex of. People are very happy to invest their time to help you succeed, whether you compensate them with equity or not.
And I think generally what we've seen is people want to be helpful, right? You just have to know what the question is. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, part of the hard part. And thank you, Mike, for plugging. Yes, Mentor Makers is a free mentor matching platform that the center offers. So check it out. I've dropped a link in the chat. All you have to do is fill out a quick form and talk a little bit about what your challenges are, and you get the keys to the kingdom and finding some cool mentors out there. Rolling right along in these questions. Let's see. Another one here. How would you give advice to on us helping our teams and others understand these practices and these concepts? In other words, how do I create a culture around this focus?
Yeah, yeah. Great. That's a fantastic question because it can't be that you are the only one following this in order for these practices to be successful for sure. I think one thing that you should do is really explain each of these things and model them. Um, the say no principles that we were talking about. I think if you tell your team, hey, if I come to you with a request, it's okay for you to say one of these things. I really want your help in holding me accountable to making sure we're doing only the most important things. I think that really empowers the team and creates thought partners, not just with you, but across the rest of the team to really kind of challenge the thinking and make sure you're focusing only on the right thing.
Yeah.
I think if you also ask the team, hey, what is the thing that we can do today that's going to make us proud in 6 months? Like that is such a liberating, empowering, energizing question for most teams. Like, what's the one thing that we can do that we want to celebrate 6 months from now? That question will definitely light a spark for most teams will definitely light a spark. I think the core context model is worth having almost a strategic offsite. Spend a couple hours with the team and get them to really take all the work that they're doing. I'm doing payroll, I'm doing marketing, I'm doing engineering, I'm doing whatever, and make sure that the tasks that come from that conversation are allocated in the right buckets. And there's a plan around outsourcing the things that you should and killing the things that you shouldn't be doing, and focusing, upwards of 70% on the stuff in the upper left-hand corner and identifying what that is and the role that everybody plays in driving those things forward.
It's great advice. All righty, here's another one. For one of those, or for those of us perfectionist solopreneurs who produce outstanding quality, typically after we perform hours of research to get the best solution outcomes and make the best decisions, where we can't necessarily time box estimate what it would take to do the X number of hours towards high stake, big expense action items, and can't put in our calendar exact times per task. How do you manage these cases?
Wow. Okay, let me have a sip of coffee and digest the question.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, it almost sounds like this person asking the question is aware that perfectionism is not necessarily the optimal approach in most things. So let me just put that out there. No judgment, but oftentimes perfection is the enemy of the good, right? And a lot of times good is good enough and perfect is not required. And the difference in time between good and perfect is a lot. And so just realizing that for yourself, understanding what requires that extra amount of effort to make it perfect, not just because you're a perfectionist, but because the work requires it, I think is the important key. And surround yourself with advisors or team members that can hold you accountable to that. Like really, I don't know your name. I don't know the name of the person that asked the question, but I'll call you Bob. So people that can say, hey, Bob, I know you're spending a lot of time on making this presentation just look fantastic, and I admire that, but I'd really love your time and attention on this other thing instead. Empowering your team to kind of hold you accountable to that, I think, could also be helpful.
So,
Colin, I know
yeah,
that
to
was probably
reframe
the
what
first
you
part of the
said.
question. Was there other parts of that question that I didn't
Oh,
address?
you nailed it. And I think part of it was just I don't think they're tracking time based on buckets. So I think being able to like just taking a look at your calendar and being able to place what activities you have existing into those buckets will help you be able to understand the percentage per each one. And then you can start hacking away at them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think two things would be helpful if you're able to achieve them. One is be honest with yourself about how you're allocating your time. And the other is empower your team to hold you accountable to how you're allocating your time. If you can create a culture where everybody's there to make sure that we're working on the most important things and shedding everything else, I think the better, more impactful the entire team is going to be on that.
Yep, great advice. Question here from Sonia. What's the best way to determine what I am proud of or what I should be proud of? I move within the leadership development space, and while workshops seemingly are what are needed, there's not much movement. Any suggestions?
Yeah, if I understand the role that you play correctly, I think one thing that I could imagine being proud of if I were in your shoes is who are the one or two or three leaders that I really help elevate from where they are today to the next role, or to magnify their impact in a measurable way. So that's one thing I could see. I could see myself doing if I was in your shoes. I think the other could be I'm launching a new podcast that really talks about the things that I care about leadership, and using that as a way to generate more interest in my services. I could see that being something that I'm particularly proud of as well. One thing I didn't mention is actually maybe a topic for another day is I really believe deeply in identifying things that you're going to be proud of, and making sure you have things that you're working to be proud of in your daily rhythm. And sometimes that's not in the business that you're leading. Sometimes that's, like I keep mentioning, like an endurance event. It could be learning a new skill. It could be breaking out of our shyness and going out and networking with other professionals. Whatever those things are, it doesn't have to be job. It doesn't only have to be job related. I think there's such an energizing power that comes from knowing you're working toward a goal that you know you're going to be proud of in 6 months' time. And
Yeah.
so, regardless whether you can find that at work or not, I think that is an important kind of life skill.
Yeah, I think as humans, that's an important life lesson too, in many ways.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, great. Keep the questions coming. There's all good. Let's see. Um, what are some prompts or exercises you do to identify what moves the needles for for your business?
Yeah, it really probably is very business centric, and probably is business dependent and maybe stage dependent as well. I think if I'm very early stage, it's how am I getting more people aware of the product that I'm building so I can get their feedback. If I can go from 1 to 100 people using my product in the next 6 months, that's that I think is a noteworthy goal. Adding a new capability is going to unlock interest in your product from a new market or new market segment. I think is kind of the same thing. That's a much later stage product, of course. Having a way to identify where you are on your product market fit journey, I think is another, like, okay, I know where we are on product market fit. I think over the next 6 months, I want to go from here to here. I think could be another one as well. Product market fit for me is three things. Really is desirability. Do customers love what you're building enough to pay the price that you want them to acquire your service or product? So desirability. Feasibility, can you operate it? Can you provide that service? Can you do that cost effectively is feasibility. And then viability, can you make money from it? So the intersection of those three things is product market fit to me. And you can come up with quantifiable metrics to measure your progress against those three things and set targets in 6 months from now where you're trying to get each of those three dimensions in the future.
Oh, that's great advice. That's funny thing that I read way back in the day. Mark Andreessen said that product market fit should feel like you're a tornado sucking up chickens.
I'm not sure what that means yet, so I'll have to think about it a little bit. But I love the analogy.
Yep. This is a great question because you were talking a little bit about mentorship, but how does one effectively use a mentor or nurture the relationship?
Yeah, I'm not a mentorship expert. I've had a number of mentees and mentors over my career. Of course, the things that I think are successful to me as a mentee are identifying what are the things that I really need help with, and making sure the mentor is aware of those, and I'm picking the right mentor that can help support me in those things. And it's not always the same person. It's not always the same mentor who can provide support in all the things that you really care about. As a mentee, identifying what you need. As a mentor, I think two things. One is hold the mentee accountable. Like, hey, you signed up for this relationship. I'm willing to invest in it only to the extent that you are. So if you miss meetings or don't come prepared or come to a meeting and we just shoot the breeze about what you're doing this coming weekend, it's not a good use of time. But if you come prepared and maybe send a pre-read ahead of time and what you're looking for and struggles that you're facing, I think that helps mentees and mentors be more committed to you. Yeah, I think I addressed as much of that as I'm qualified to, but
Totally. No,
you
yeah.
might have other feedback for that as well.
And one thing that I've heard from the mentors in our pool is even if there's no like immediate action item, like always just following up and then recapping and thanking them for their time will pay off tenfold. Nothing like hearing from a mentor, oh, my mentee had this meeting with me. 6 months later, I see him on the cover of TechCrunch based on the strategy that we had explored together, and then they never followed up, thanked me. It's
Absolutely.
not like they
Yeah.
need to thank you, but it just feels good if you feel helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And energize you to go help support the next founder as well.
Or you again, too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're almost at time, but there is one last one that is back on topic. I feel I do tasks slower than other people or take much more time than I expected to with certain tasks. How could I be better at this?
I think the question for me is it an estimation thing or is it a quest for perfection thing or is it a skill set thing? Like diagnosing why things take longer than you think it is at least a part of the key to unlocking the answer to that question. I would say it probably doesn't matter what the issue is if it's not in the upper left. If it's in the upper left, then how to be more efficient and be more impactful, whatever makes all the sense in the world. Everything else, I think, is things that you should be streamlining with your team's support and or outsourcing. And so I wouldn't spend too much time diagnosing why things take longer. I would focus more on kind of outsourcing and asking your team to help streamline, unless it's in the upper left-hand corner.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much and really appreciate you joining and sharing a bunch of your tips and tactics to maximize impact today. It's been great. I'm going to take some of this. Hopefully all of you take some of this away to become more excited, more proud of what the work that you're doing today will be in 6 months. So thank you again, Mike, and thank you everyone who's joined us. We got a bunch of upcoming webinars, and we look forward to seeing you all online soon. And thanks again, Mike.